Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
bringing you this week's Living Ascension. Hey, Michael. Good to see you bright and early. Yeah. So back in North Carolina, where I have not seen the sun since I returned Thursday night from Hawaii.
Well, I guess the universe figured you'd had your share when you were in Hawaii.
Apparently.
You needed to balance that out.
Yesterday, my husband and I were walking, and I think the sun came out for 10 minutes, and that is all I have seen the sun for the entire, seriously, it's been rainy and gray and cold and gross. Blah.
Well,
But
you're getting all your seasons right here in one
month.
Right.
That's right. So I have my hot cup of tea with my Hawaiian cup. But anyway, so this, there's been this has been sort of popping around this thought and this conversation for a while, but it's something that really hits me now, because every time it seems like I'm finding so I go places and I love to travel and everything else, but it's like there are some places that resonate with me more than others, right? As with everybody, there are some places that resonate with me more than others. There are some places where I literally feel like I'm leaving a piece of myself behind when I leave, because it's like and for whatever reason, I have a really challenging time energetically bringing that part of me with me, even when I consciously, set that up. And we've talked about that for years, right? When we go to these vortex points and all that kind of stuff, right?
Well, and I mean, even if you just look at it from a perspective of when I go on vacation, because usually you pick your vacation spot based on somewhere that really allows you that experience of relaxation and pleasure visually. You engage in activities that you save for vacation,
right?
And then you come back. You come home, or you.
And I would say that we don't count vacations and have to do a family. That doesn't count.
Well, that's true.
Typically.
That's true.
But
it
can be, but it more often than not, for most, it's not. Most often it's an obligatory pattern or whatever. But anyhow, going home to visit the folks or whatever, things like that. Yeah. Right. Because I usually have clients who come in and they're like, oh my God, I need to reset myself because I just came back from, going home to visit the family and stuff like that. So,
right. Put myself back together.
Yeah. So we'll put those aside, not counting those.
Yeah, I don't consider that vacation.
Good morning, Yashmin. So, but yes, you're right. So we align ourselves with. We tend to, not everybody though, because sometimes we're searching, right? Sometimes we're searching for places that, and it's like, so we get stuck in this space. And it's not necessarily just talking about that, not talking about those kind of things, vacation only. It's talking about in our lives, we get stuck in this searching, right? Of what can I live with? Right. Most people don't think of what makes me happy. What would make me, this is so many layers. It's hard for me to start in the middle.
I know,
right?
It's hard to get to the bottom to start.
Right.
Coming back out.
I know. But we do.
People look at what will make me happy in the moment. What will make me happy? What will satisfy a need I identify?
Right. And most, 98% of the time, we have gotten into this really, let's get all moved, deep habit of, I just realized my camera's all crooked. I'm I'm all the way over here and it's whatever. We get into this pattern of we think we want something, but it's really based on what we were taught and we were caused to believe, right? And it was funny because I'm trying to think back to, I had this conversation last night with my husband because he was asking me what we were talking about on the podcast this week. Right. And so I was like trying to back up and get to that, like the same thing. And it's like, well, it's really like this. We talk in spirituality, we talk about, this is how I did it with him. In spirituality, we talk about authenticity all the time. We talk about finding your authentic self, like being your authentic self. We talk about being your authentic self. And yet most of the time we really don't know who that authentic self is, because we are so conditioned, and we allow ourselves to be so conditioned by our families, our culture, our, like the people we've been around, like how we feel about ourselves, because it all comes down to self-love. Course number 7 on Wonderland. If you would like to see it.
Well, and it also comes down to how well you know yourself, which
Right.
we don't spend a lot of time on that.
No, and culturally we talk a lot about, like, we get brought up, this is what makes you a good person. Like, if you do this when you grow up, you will be happy. Right. That's what we just tell somebody. Right. And so it's a very conditioned thing. Well, this is what will make you happy. Getting married, having 2.5 kids and a white picket fence and a dog and a cat or whatever. That's
and a job that will let you pay the bills.
Right. A job will let you pay the bills. And when we were kids, our parents told us, and that will give you a good pension when you retire, right? Which we don't have anymore, because I had no idea this was, that we weren't going to have that.
Right. But the world was going to
change so dramatically since our generation, grew up anyway. But then we're brought up with these ideals, and then we think, okay, well, that's what I was told is going to make me happy. So therefore that's what is supposed to make me happy. So that's what I should strive for. And that means we really don't know ourselves, right? Because we don't ever ask, we don't ever stop and say, will that make me happy? Like, will I be happy in that kind of situation? Is that what I really desire?
I realize that this is kind of off, but what just popped into my head was there's a commercial on TV, and I think it's Liberty Mutual, but it says, research shows that consumers remember commercials of young people having fun. So it shows this picture of people at the pool, and it's like a rundown pool, and they're all dressed drab and they're all kind of hanging out. Then all of a sudden they have their Liberty Mutual yellow t-shirts on, and everybody's got a computer, and everybody's like, oh, I'm young and fun, and I'm having a great time, and I'm talking about insurance, and it's like, and we're all going to remember this commercial. But that's what it reminds me of, is we pop back into that belief that was instilled when we were young. It's like, well, you have to have kids to be happy, or you have to have a job that you make X amount of money to be happy, or you have to be, live in this neighborhood, or have this kind of car, or weigh this much, or be able, go to the gym, or one that recently's come up is, well, you really should volunteer.
Yeah.
Because that will make you happy. That will make you happy. And so why
would that make you happy? Because you're serving other people, right? And then they'll think well of you because you're volunteering and serving them and sacrificing yourself for them, and then you can then value yourself, right? That's what we do.
It's like you window dress it. You sit there and you say, and in defense of doing that, that's kind of what we were brought up. That's what we witnessed our parents doing. That's what we've witnessed in history. We've observed it, and that's the tool that we have right now.
Right.
Comparison. I guess let me try this. Let me try this on. And it's like that exercise you do about trying on a coat and see how it feels. Let me try on the energy of this job, or the energy of this family, or whatever. And we're finding that it's really uncomfortable.
Well,
it's like a straight jacket.
Yeah, right. And it's like, oh, well, we tell ourselves it's comfortable. We tell ourselves that we feel good.
This should be comfortable. There's something wrong with me because it's not.
Right. And I can't tell you how much money I've made over the past 10 years, 11 years by people who've come to me, and clients that have lived that life and said, I have a great life. Why am I not happy?
Right. Well, and I mean, look at all the drug commercials for all the antidepressants and just the goal is to be happy. The goal is to have the energy to move through your day. And it's more looking at you're the problem, not your day being the problem.
Right. Right. And so we forget, and it's funny. A lot of these things are talked about often, right? And we talk about authenticity and finding your true self and all that kind of stuff. And we
Right.
don't realize the depth of the importance of, number one, the depth of the importance of that, and the height of that project, because we have so many layers on top of that, right? So what we were talking about this, and
Well, and there's also judgment layered in of if I deviate from this social norm, what are other people going to think of me? Because that factors into my happiness.
right.
And I care about what other people think about me
Hmm.
more than I care about myself.
Right. Well, because if they think that I'm good, right, then I obviously am, right? Even if I'm not feeling that with myself.
Right.
So then we never get to our authentic self, because we're always living other people's expectations or picture of us, right?
And
So
we're always seeking and searching based on other people's beliefs and suggestions and reality, and it's
standards,
it's
other
almost like
standards.
we're
Yeah.
at a surface level.
Right. Right. And so what I was what I was looking at is this. There are some times in our life, right? And so we can go back to the vacation thing or not, it doesn't matter, um because where I went wasn't vacation, it was work, right? Because I was holding a retreat for people, and I was holding space for people, and managing the whole thing and everything else. Um Guiding and everything. And so but I was looking at is, I find these places that I really resonate with, right?
Right.
And it's a natural resonance. It is not forced. It is not, oh, well, this is what everybody else says, so therefore this is what I should do, and da da da. This is how it feels to me, right? Because there are places that people like deem as like these awesome spiritual places, and I'm like, that didn't do anything for me, right? Just not my
Right.
resonance.
Or I'm just not drawn to that.
Right. Just not drawn to that. But I was looking at that going, okay, so why do I feel like, it's like, well, I literally could have just stayed and I would have been fine, right? I would have been totally happy and whatever. And I said, so why is this place different than others? Because there have been plenty of places I love, right?
Right.
And then I'm happy being there, and then I'm happy going home. Like, and it's like, okay, that's fine. But I was like, there are things about myself, and this is for all of us, and this is what we don't really ever look at, right? So there are things about myself. We talk all the time about finding your passion, right? Allowing your
Right.
passion, allowing yourself to live what makes your heart sing, right? And that's actually what the term that came to us when we were talking was this authentic, was it, what do you call it? Authentic,
Authentic resonance.
yeah, authentic or authenticity resonant authenticity, something like that. I have it written down, and I don't have my notebook sitting in front of me, which was funny that I forgot to do that. But
Authentic resonance is what I wrote down.
authentic resonance, right? And so I believe, because this was the conversation I had with my husband last night. He's like, well, you can change anything, right? And I said, right. I said, but I think we align ourselves with certain resonances to come into this life as the puzzle, sort of like puzzle pieces that will allow us the keys to remembering what fulfills us, right? In terms of feeling fully impassioned and fully ourselves, fully, truly, authentically ourselves. And those keys are the things we resonate the most with, that we get drawn the most to, that don't have to do with ego, right? That don't have to do with, I need this, right?
Right.
It's just a feeling of, no, I am me here in this place and doing this. I am so authentically me. Everything feels perfect, no matter what it looks like.
you said something that really pinged something in me was, you can you can change that. But what are you changing? Are you changing you to fit the circumstances, or are you changing the circumstances to fit you? And I think that that's the key in what we say is this for me now?
Mhm.
Not, can I make me make this for me now?
Right.
And I think that that's a distinction that's important to make here, because getting to that authentic resonance is looking at yourself and looking at what feeds that resonance within yourself. And like you said, I can go all these different places, but there's something about certain places that feed that in me and others don't.
Right.
And that's coming to that recognition that that's my authentic resonance, and in searching, looking for other things that fit into that, and I call that nourishment.
Right. Right. Because
Because if it doesn't feed that authentic resonance, it's really not nourishing.
right. And then we're always having to put extra effort into aligning it if it doesn't naturally resonate. Right. And so I
Right.
do, yes, I do believe we set that up for ourselves in every lifetime. Like what will be, it's almost like the tuning fork, our personal tuning fork, like in a way, right? It aligns us with our own our own frequency, like
Right.
our optimal frequency, and I think about, like how many clients I've worked with that talk about like that I've worked with on finding their passion, allowing their passion, allowing them to express their passion, right? And what makes them sing.
Right.
And I remember one client who had said to me that when I helped her with that, right, it was like that part of her life came into such saturated color. She realized that everything else in her life was black and white. And she had a multi-million-dollar business and a marriage that looked perfect on the outside, and the beautiful property and a wonderful life, right? And she's like, yeah, but it didn't resonate with me. It wasn't what I wanted. Like it wasn't
Right.
like I created what everybody told me I should create to say that I was successful and happy, right? And I wasn't happy. So then she
Right.
started doing this something else, and she's like, oh, that feels so easy to me. Like she'd been trying, and she didn't realize it until she let herself do that, how hard it had been for her to continuously put up a facade in her life to continue this picture that had been created. And it's like, well, and so what did she do? She shifted all of that over the years. It's been years now, right? But it's like she changed all of it. She left it. She sold her business. She changed her vocation. She changed her life. And she is so authentically happy today. And every step of the way, she questioned herself and we'd have sessions, and she'd call me up and be like crying of like, what did I do? Like she'd have that moment of guilt, or like, what did I do to change this? I'm like, no, this is showing everyone in your purview the importance of your own authenticity, your own passion,
Right.
and how
Right.
happy you are that you can exude that now from that happiness instead of guilt. So get rid of the guilt to say, no, this is who I am. This is who I really am. The person
Right.
you thought you knew before is not who I am. It's only a pretend person that I created to fill that facade. And like, I
Well,
would say so many of us are like that.
and getting to that place, in at least for myself, takes experimentation. It takes stepping away from who I think I am and start, I hate to say going down rabbit holes, but literally, well, let me try this. Let me try this. Well, what about, I've always wanted to do this. How does that resonate with me? How does that feed me? And that is a question of getting to know yourself and getting to know what nourishes you. And a lot of times people are like, well, I just don't know you anymore. And it's like, oh, I must be making progress then.
Right. Right. Because you actually didn't really know me, and the thing that's really interesting are the people who have known you for who you are beyond all the facade, right? And often they stay in the background of your life because you don't want to look at that, because that's a reflection back to you that you're not ready to look at if you're not ready to look at your authentic self, right? And it's funny
Right.
that sometimes it really shifts the pattern of your relationships when you
It
allow
does.
yourself to actually be your authentic self. And
Well, and I found that, it may go through a rocky patch, but if it's part of the nourishment of yourself, it will come to a new place to where it then does nourish you. And I think that's really important to understand that, you don't necessarily have to take your life, wad it up like a piece of paper, throw it in the trash and start fresh. It can be, let me investigate, let me explore this, and I can then reintegrate that in or not.
well,
So it's
or it happens like with my client, which it was like that little piece opened up and then she's like, yeah, I don't want the black and white anymore. I'm done.
right, right.
And, and sometimes that can be shocking. And I have worked with many people to go through that, like a big shift but then, and yes, it can be very bumpy along the way. But then when they finally get there, it's like, there's no excuses. There's no apologies. There's no, like, this is who I am. And then you know what? There's nothing that can make you unhappy, because all that
Right.
happiness comes from inside. It doesn't come from the approval of other people. It doesn't come from, what other people think of you. Um,
Well,
and
and
it's,
it hones that guidance to where you automatically are attracted to things that nourish you, and your guidance just brings them, and you
mhm,
automatically recognize them, and it just, it literally, they talk about when you get a well-oiled machine, how it hums. That's your authenticity. Once you get to that resonance and you've identified that, it just becomes self-fulfilling and self-perpetuating.
right, right.
And
But
that doesn't mean that there won't be that occasional bump in the road and there won't be that occasional like derailment. But then that's just a question of, okay, that resonance is expanding. And now I can look beyond my comfort zone, because your comfort zone will adapt.
right. Once we allow it to, once we allow ourselves to move. Yeah. And a lot of times
Well, and the comfort zone is not where you need to start looking.
no. And that's funny though, because there are people I've known, I've asked this of myself, the things that you say, well, I've always liked doing that. I've always liked doing that. Right. And then it's like, well, have you looked at why you always like doing that? You do,
Right.
do you like doing that because it gives you approval from other people? Right.
Right.
And then, so like, those are the hidden things when we say, oh, well, doing this makes me happy. Does it really, or does it fulfill that need that somebody else can approve of you because they approve
Well,
of?
and that can even be finer tuned, because if you enjoy like creative arts, and you explain it by saying, well, I can make people want to buy this, which then will make it okay. And if you step beyond that, no, I'm doing it for myself, then that totally shifts your dynamic and relationship with that activity, because then you are truly doing it for yourself as a creative outlet, not I'm making everybody else approve of it because I'm doing it to sell or to make money or to have people approve of me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And
So
so,
there's that's a very fine line in there,
yes.
but it's
Yeah.
huge in terms of your authentic resonance, and that will equate to your fulfillment from it, because then it doesn't become a chore you do for other people. It becomes a way of nourishment for yourself.
Right. Right. And the thing is, like I said, I sort of feel like we put that in our blueprint, like, because, it's like this. It was funny that my husband said, well, you can change it. I'm like, yeah, you can, but why would you want to, if that's really what's going to remind you really who you are, right? That's going to help you get to that authentic resonance. So it's like, yeah, you can change that, but that's like saying to an artist, stop painting.
Right.
You can change that. You don't have to love painting. You can change that. You can do something else.
Exactly. Exactly.
And
And
it's like,
and
No, because that's just the natural thing that allows me to express that I feel the most comfortable expressing. So whether you say, because I was saying, and it had to do with, I know, and I've said this for years, I know I'm going to end up back at the ocean, right? Living at the ocean, because
Right.
that's where I grew up and that's where I feel me. That's where I feel me the most. And it is the most natural me ever. And every time, no matter where I go, I sit by the ocean or I'm by the ocean, I always feel like I'm leaving a part of me behind every time I leave, no matter what I've done to change that, right? Because it's just my natural resonance. It's that, and I can't explain it. It's the energy of it. It's whatever. It's what I totally, completely resonate with. And not everybody does. Some people resonate with the mountains. Some people resonate with, other things. And some people don't even have a resonance with the geography, right? Some people just
Right.
could be anywhere and they're fine, right? And I just realized that about myself. I just really realized that about myself last week, going, no, really. The only time I feel like I am truly 100% me is when I'm by the ocean, right? And I'm like, and it's like, well, so yeah. And I've tried to change that because I moved away from it, right? I left it when I was 19 years old. I lived, several hours away from it. I have said for 26 years lived within driving distance of it, but I only get to go a couple times a year unless I travel to it, right? So, but every time I go, I'm like, I don't want to leave. And it's not just because it's, I'm on a break or whatever. Cause like I said, I was working. It wasn't like I
Right.
wasn't doing anything. And it's like, but it's just so easy to be me in that kind of environment. And I'm not even sure why. It's just how I am.
Well, and it may be that as you identify this and allow that nourishment to settle in, that you can then take that other places and be equally as comfortable because you've received that nourishment. You've acknowledged that nourishment and you've allowed that for yourself, to where you no longer have to struggle to achieve that surreptitiously. You can
Well,
just acknowledge that.
or it
This
won't ever
is
change,
this
or it
is
won't
my
ever
authentic
change.
resonance.
Right. And it won't ever change. And it's just a matter of, well, then do I just live by the ocean? Like, why do I fight it? Why do I deny myself that then, if I acknowledge that of myself? Right. So that's what we were talking about last night. I'm like, but that's like just saying to an artist, well, then just don't paint anymore. Like just take
Right.
that energy into, you know, doing a garbage collection. I mean, or something like that,
Well, and
which
we created this planet with all its diversities, whether it's the weather extremes or whether it's the climate extremes or the geographic extremes, to allow us to explore that.
yes. Right.
And
And it's like,
by
because there are different facets to ourselves. So for example, like, and I was talking about, well, the mountains would be a second, right?
right,
But ultimately I'd love both to be right together. Right. And that was the resonance of where I was. And so it's like, well, and I've always said, actually for years, I've said, that's where I want to end up. I want to end up at the ocean, and I want mountains there too. Cause I want to be able to go. I'm like, I want both, that's the both worlds. And so the more we do that, then we're like, okay, but I feel like partially we start to recognize, I think when we start to recognize those facets of ourselves, right? So you're talking about bringing it into other things. I think it's just a matter of, once we recognize those facets within ourselves, where do I feel like I am most me? Like, where can I allow myself to just be me unapologetically, right? Then we can recognize that feeling whenever we do, or go someplace or be something. Like, we can recognize that feeling again, right? Which is that authentic resonance of, oh no, this is another piece of me. Like, instead of like bringing it, I think it's actually just acknowledging it, because it will come up in other places. It's like, we don't allow it of ourselves. Like, we don't allow it of ourselves because I'm too busy creating this picture or this life or this whatever. And then it's like, oh, well, I love doing that, but that doesn't fit into this picture. So I can't really nourish that. Right. I won't really nourish that in myself. And so we just ignore it, put it on the shelf, and then we go to this. And I'm not saying that we can't change it. I think we can. I mean, absolutely we can. But I feel like, why would we, if it really allows us to be the tuning, like if it's our tuning fork, why would we
Mhm.
ignore it?
Well, and if it's a question of allowing that alignment and allowing that nourishment, so then we can expand beyond it, to me, that would be changing it, is to allow it enough to expand, to allow that and more.
Right. Right. So, it can be, and it can be where you live. It could be, because you know what, here's how many things, and this is what we're talking about. How many things do we sacrifice of ourselves that are our tuning forks, because it's like, oh, well, I want to be in this relationship. I want to be in this marriage because I was told that I should be in a relationship and married, and that would make me happy. Or I want to be a parent, and that told me that I was told that that would make me happy and that would fulfill me.
Or
And
I want, I want to make this amount of money, so that equates to these jobs, because I
right.
believe they only fit this salary range.
Or I've been told that only, right, right. And it's
Right,
funny, 'cause
right,
you think about so many things today that are making a living for people that 20 years ago we're gonna be like, yeah, you could never like make a living doing that, right? Or,
right,
make money doing
right,
that. So, and that's the allowing the universe to pay you, right, to be you, pay you handsomely
right,
just to be you.
right,
And I
right,
believe it naturally happens when we allow that authentic resonance, no matter what that looks like, no matter what.
right. And I do believe that it starts with just exploring, and starts with
Giving yourself permission to, yeah.
and exposing yourself to different things, and things that have always been in the back of your mind, allow them to come to the forefront and say, okay, if I did that, how would I feel, and how can I dip my toe in that pool, just to see,
Yeah, what if I
just
just
to
tried
see
this?
right, just to see how that feels.
Yeah, yeah. And so, you know, that's why often, so here's the thing. When think about this, how many people that go on vacation and they're very sad to go back to work, right?
Oh, right,
Pretty much a good portion of a good majority of the world, right? And why is that? Well, you can say, oh, well, because it's going back to the everyday and da 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 da, like and you get all this and it's like,
and that's where all the problems are.
yeah, yeah. And
Nobody
it's like,
has
well,
problems on vacation.
but then which we know isn't the case either, but they're different problems
Right,
sometimes. Sometimes. But the thing is, well, then maybe you need to look at that. If you're unhappy to
right,
go into your life every day, where are you not then, instead of being saying, okay, it was a great break, and now I'm happy to go forward into my life again, or
what's
to
next, right.
what's next.
Well, I mean, you see the commercials talking about how you spend what, a third of your life in your bed, so why not have the best bed?
Mhm.
Look at your work, look at
Right,
your life. That's
right,
where you spend 100% of your time.
right,
So why would you not want that to be nourishing and optimal for you and your well-being and your mental health and your relationships? I mean, it up levels everything.
it does. It does. And when you allow yourself that resonance, it makes everything easier and your decisions easier, no matter
Right.
what it looks like.
Right. Well, and it makes, like we've talked so many times, it makes following your guidance just seamless, because you get that resonance and that yummy feeling of, oh, this is what I've been looking for.
Right. Right. And why would you want to change that? So you say, yeah, can you change it? Of course you could, but we do change that we try to change that all the time, or we say we have to change that because it doesn't serve, because it doesn't, it's not fruitful, or it
Right.
doesn't make sense, or it's not logical, or
It doesn't match the beliefs that I'm carrying,
right, right. Or it doesn't match the beliefs of the people around me whose opinion I value more than my own.
whose I've adopted. Right. Right.
So
So where would we start with this?
yeah, I think it
I
would just,
think you first said give yourself permission. And I
Yeah.
think that that's really important, which is like recognizing that you have that authentic resonance. And it's not something that you have to create. It's there. It's uncovering it.
Yes. Yes. And really, like, I feel like when you hit the tuning fork of anything that's an authentic, in authentic resonance with you, it's just effortless. Like, you're like, yeah, like, yeah, and it doesn't mean you have to do it like well. It doesn't mean you have to be like the best dancer or singer or whatever it is, like, it's just that when you hit that resonance of whatever that activity or that being or that place is, then you go, oh, it's almost like I forgot to breathe out. And now I've just, oh yeah, I can breathe out now.
Or
That's,
I can breathe deeply now.
yeah, yes. Yeah. And it becomes now, and then it's like, oh, and it's like, my client had explained, it's like this part of you, when you do allow that to open, it's like a saturation of color and everything else starts to look bland, like, washed out. And then you're
Right.
like, oh, well, why wouldn't I want everything to be that saturated? Why wouldn't I allow that for myself? I deserve it. Most of the time, we don't believe we deserve it. That's the other thing. We don't, like, who am I to live the life of my dreams?
Right. Or who
And you
am
might,
I to claim this?
yeah. I mean, and people might laugh about that. And the thing is, who am I to have a dream, to have a life that's different than what other people would expect?
Right.
And so, yeah, so giving yourself permission is a huge thing. So giving yourself permission to see, to remember and explore and feel into, to know, to remember what it feels like when you hit that tuning fork, when you hit that actual resonance of what feels like it's just as easy as breathing to you, like in terms of like,
Right.
and how you love doing it. And it might, like I said, it doesn't mean that you're like the best thing ever at it, but it just feels like I could do this 24/7 and I would work on it and be like happy doing it. And it would just be fulfilling to me. And I wouldn't care what other people thought.
Right. And I think that we also can pull in the concept of presence here is when you're engaged in that exploration and that examination of what you're doing. Presence allows you to be in the moment to the point where you can recognize resonance or not,
Mhm.
to say, yeah, this doesn't work for me.
Yeah. Right.
And if we're doing 50,000 things and aren't actually engaged in that activity, we'll miss that. And I think that that's where we have been,
Mhm.
is we've, the value of multitasking, which means you do a lot of things not really well.
Right. Right. And or you do a lot of things for other people and never do anything for yourself. Like that's part of it too,
That's
right? And
true.
it's, like how many times in our head, and we never say this out loud, this is a little whisper in our head of, oh, I'll do this because he likes to do it. I'll do this because she likes to do it. And it makes her happy or it makes him happy. And him or her being happy makes me happy. Or it's easier for me, right? And these are the things
Right.
we pile on top of ourselves that prevent us from allowing that authenticity. Because then we end up doing this, spending a whole bunch of time doing a lot of things that other people like and not necessarily ourselves. So that like we're like okay with, but it doesn't really resonate, and it's
Right.
like there are things that my husband does that I have no interest in whatsoever. And I'm just like, okay, well, enjoy.
Absolutely.
I don't need to be a part of that because it doesn't do anything for me. But I'm so happy that really, strikes home for you. So go and do that. And we have plenty of things that strike that chord for both of us that we do together. So it's like, okay. And I feel nothing, like I don't feel obligated to go engage in those things with him, which I know a lot of people do with their spouses. Like, oh no, well,
Right.
we have to do everything together. It's like, nope, no, we do not.
Right. Right. I had a friend whose husband just goes on vacation and plays golf every day. And people have asked her, how can you let him do that? And it's like, what do you mean let him? Who are you to let or not let? It's like I let him have his passion. How about I embrace that he has his passion? I just, I've never understood that concept of controlling like that.
Well, or you end up doing something like, I've done couples like that, and I just like, I would be like, if that's all he wants to do, right, then let him go by himself and I'll go on my own vacation.
Oh, absolutely.
That's what I would do.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'd be like, I'm not going to sit around and wait for him. I would just go and have my own vacation.
Well, giving him permission to do what he loves gives you permission to do what you love.
Right. Right. And then maybe you plan on a vacation where you find something that you both love that you could do together. I mean, there's ways to work with all of that. Right. But we spend so much time. But I do also know people who go along with what their husband is like passionate about, and they basically only ever go places that their husband wants to do and wants to go, and they just sort of sit in the wings and they're like,
Right.
not really excited about it. There are plenty of people who do that too. I mean, what I think men too, men as well, for their wives as well. It's not just one
Oh,
way.
absolutely. Right. No,
Uh,
it was not lopsided.
no. Um,
So let's start with
yeah. Giving yourself permission.
I give myself permission to identify or to align with
My authentic resonance, and
my,
to know it when I hit on it. I know it for what
easily.
it is. Yes, easily know it for what it is. And I give myself permission to also explore all the possibilities, of what because it's not just one thing,
Oh, right, right.
of all the possibilities of what they could be, and enjoy it. I allow myself to enjoy it, and I give my permission to have space in my life to do it. Yeah. Easily, with fun.
Right.
All right. So ready to take a deep breath. Let's close our eyes, and step out of separation back into wholeness and oneness as we hold the vibration where that is our truth. That is from where we exist, create, and experience. Okay. Sarah, come on back.
My computer's messed up, so was I on mute?
You were not muted, but I think you had me muted or whatever.
Oh, I was trying to keep, my dogs just decided that they were going to be authentically themselves and just play. I could not mute myself because of the controls.
Oh, that's weird. Yeah.
I can't access that screen.
Usually you can. But anyway.
Anyway, so I apologize for all the dog noise.
Oh, no, that's okay. That's all right. Yeah, that was actually, which is very calm. I just kept on starting it. Like, it was funny. It was almost like I was showing myself like a picture, like a map almost that had little dots on it. Like, oh, go to this point in the dot, go to this point in the dot, go to this dot, go to this point on the map. We have that internally. It's just that we ignore it most of the time. And it's like, oh, that's nice. And then eventually we would want to make it one big dot.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept seeing that you go from being the one being fed to nourish yourself to the one doing the feeding.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kept I don't know, it's like at first, like, the dogs were just like, oh, I'm authentically this wild, I want to play. And it was like this chaos. And then they settled. And it was like, oh, the nourishment. And then they started then playing again. It's like, wow. Quite the representation of settling and nourishing yourself and then allowing yourself to give back.
What's funny is, my cat just got up and left when we started. Like, he's like, I'm a cat. I'm already authentically me all the time.
Right.
No excuses. Y'all just need to be a cat.
Right.
Oh, all right. Well, everyone sit with that this week and look at yourself in this honest light and allow that clarity. Give yourself that permission of one thing, like to acknowledge, even if you don't do anything about it yet, to acknowledge one thing about yourself
Right.
that is truly your tuning fork. Like, it doesn't have to be huge. It can just be, oh, when I do this, I feel so at ease and at home, like no matter, and it doesn't mean like it can be being someplace, it could be doing something. It's all up to you.
Right. Right. Or even just a new thought process.
Yes.
Get out of the thought grooves, the thought ruts, and start thinking a different way.
I think about what in my life is where I feel so absolutely alive, like so absolutely alive and naturally invigorated. That was the other thing that I was talking about, is that's another thing that I am so alive in that kind of place. And so it's like, that's another clue for yourself.
Right.
Yeah. Like that never tires you out. Like, what is it that you were like, I could do this all day and still be invigorated to do more, kind of thing, you know?
Well, and a good clue for me is, what do I get involved in that I then forget to eat?
Oh, right. Or do anything else.
Right.
Like I've gotten into stuff where like you forget to go to the bathroom, like literally.
Or
all of
you
a sudden,
just
like,
get lost and time just
yes.
evaporates.
Yep. Absolutely. So look at that this week, because this is we have our own map. It's a matter of whether we acknowledge it or not. And excuse me, the more that we explore that, the faster then we find that authenticity, that passion, living that passion. And I believe that that is really what brings us to our consciousness in its entirety, to our enlightenment, to our ascension, however you want to put it.
Right.
So
Happiness.
yes. Yep. Bliss, not just happiness.
Personal bliss.
Yes. So take that with you this week. Report back in the comments of both this or even on our podcast. And you can do this on Facebook, on our page, or on our podcast at livingascension.podbean.com. And let us know how it's going for you. And if you know others, please share our videos and our podcasts for those who could use it, which is pretty much everyone, because this is a collective effort. So please, we're very appreciative of that. And like, subscribe, all those fun things, and then come back next time. But we will be back next week.
Yes, we will.
And next week we have quite a doozy of a topic as well. So we already have that in place. So stay tuned. So have a great week. We'll see you next time. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evagnoni
signing off with this week's Living Ascension. Have a great one.